sends his regrets. He had to attend a funeral this morning for a longtime friend who passed away suddenly. He may make an appearance partway through the morning, but could not be here at the beginning. It is a great privilege to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Ernest Moniz, United States Secretary of Energy, to our congressional delegation, Senator Patrick Leahy, who is en route, Senator Bernie Sanders, Congressman Peter Welch, and Governor Peter Shumlin. Where else but in Vermont would we be able to get the entire congressional delegation, as well as the governor, to welcome a member of President Obama's cabinet? And where better than Vermont to bring the Secretary of Energy to see and hear firsthand the innovations, the investments, and the determination that we as a community employ in the pursuit of efficient and sustainable energy. As the Dean of the Faculty at Middlebury College and your host today, I speak for many when I say we are particularly honored that we are gathered here on this campus, where we have long emphasized and embraced a dual commitment to environmental leadership both in the academy and in our own operations. As the first college or university to establish an environmental studies program for undergraduates 50 years ago come next year, Middlebury has introduced a liberal arts approach to issues of global importance, issues defined by the connections and overlaps between our natural world and human endeavors. For nearly half a century, we have been providing our students with the scholarly tools and experiential learning opportunities to broaden their understanding of pressing environmental issues. They, in turn, have been devising solutions and innovations of great consequence, which are being employed in the name of sustainable and efficient energy near and far. One needn't look further than our own campus to see the impact of student innovation in this arena. From our 2 solar decathlon houses to our biomass facility to our goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2016, students have helped to lead the way and put into motion so many of our environmental initiatives that have come to define how we operate as an institution. And once in place, these initiatives become living laboratories for future Middlebury students, greatly enhancing both our educational and residential environments. We very much look forward to hearing what our honored guests have to say today. With this in mind, I would like to request that we all adhere to our shared community values of respect and responsibility. Please do not interfere with our guests' ability to speak or our audience members' right to hear and see the speakers. As time allows, we plan to provide the audience an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the discussion, and we ask that you hold all questions until that time. So, at this point, it is my great pleasure to hand the microphone to Senator Bernie Sanders.
Senator Leahy will be here in a moment. But I'm delighted to be here this morning on this campus, and I want to thank Middlebury College, faculty, staff, student body for all of the innovative work that you're doing on energy, not only academically, but in real life. And I appreciate that. You're one of the leaders in the state, and we thank you very much for doing that. I am delighted to be here with Secretary Moniz. In Washington, as some of you may know, despite all of the scientific evidence, there are some people who still refuse to accept that climate change is real, that climate change is significantly caused by human activity, that climate change today is already causing devastating impacts in the United States and around the world. And in Washington, sadly, we have, unfortunately, many, many people who refuse not only to take the actions needed to address the problem, but we even acknowledge the science of the situation. I am proud to say that we have a Secretary of Energy who does understand the reality of climate change and is prepared within the resources that he has to take the actions necessary to help us address the crisis. Today what we're going to have is a good panel discussion. We understand that in many respects, Vermont has been a leader in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of weatherization. In Rutland County alone, and we'll be going down to Rutland County in a few moments after the program, we are in the process of weatherizing approximately 1,000 homes, substantially cutting greenhouse gas emissions, saving working families money on their fuel bills and creating jobs. And our job as a state is to show the nation that we can create a win-win-win dynamic through energy efficiency, through sustainable energy, that we can in fact begin the process of reversing climate change, that we can save people money on their fuel bills, and at the same time, as a nation, we can create the hundreds of thousands of decent paying jobs that we desperately need. And my view is, and here's my view, and I mean this very seriously. I believe that this small state can lead the nation. And in many ways, we are already doing that through weatherization efforts, through efforts in sustainable energy, through smart meter, through methane digesters, from using landfills to make energy, having the fact that we have some 35 schools in the state that are heating with wood. We are making progress as a state. But we know, given the enormity of the problem, given the fact that the scientific community is telling us that the window of opportunity is narrow, I believe very much that this small state can lead the nation, and that the United States of America can lead the world. We cannot, as a nation, go to China, who are building coal plants every other day, go to India, go to Russia, go to countries around the world, and say, you know what, we have a major crisis, and we've got to transform our energy system unless we as a nation are doing that. And I believe this small state can in fact lead this nation, which can lead the world. And that is in fact what we have got to do. The reason that we can lead is that we have the political leadership. It is not every state in the country that has the entire congressional delegation. Hi, Peter. Unanimously standing together on this issue. And Peter has played a great role in the House on this. There has a governor who has been a leader among governors on this issue, has a senator who has done as much as anybody in funding efforts to transform our energy system. We have a private sector, we have an academic community which is strong on this issue. We have grassroots movements. We have over 100 town committees where people are knocking on doors all over our state, bringing people together around energy issues. So if there's any state that can do it, we can do it. And the responsibility is enormous because the risks and the dangers out there are so horrendous. So with that, I want to again thank the college for your leadership role, for the students who are doing a great job. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the senior senator from the state of Vermont, somebody who for many, many years has been active on these issues, has used his position on the Appropriations Committee to bring substantial funding into the state of Vermont. My good friend and your friend, Senator Patrick Leahy.
See somebody here, and also we have overflow problems. Is that correct? By doing this, and Bernie, thank you for putting all this together. And Mr. Secretary, I always like seeing you and meeting with you in Washington, but it's really nice to have you here in my native state. It feels even better. And Dean Lloyd, I know that President Leibowitz has to be gone for a funeral, but I always like coming to Middlebury. Last time this year was with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and that was always exciting. And you were kind enough to give me an honorary degree, which is something I cherish. You know, the Secretary has to oversee the most complex and important area of federal policy jurisdiction. When he became Secretary, I said, I don't know whether to offer you congratulations or condolences because of the complexity of what he has to do. He's dealing with the physical and economic well-being of the nation and the very future, not only of our nation, but our planet, depends on finding the best answers to the energy puzzle. The third National Climate Assessment last week shows unprecedented details on the fast evolving impacts of global climate change. And the few flat earthers who still say there's no such thing as climate change, enough already. Acknowledge that we do have a major problem, and let's start working at solving it. It's way past due for our children, our grandchildren, for our country, for the world. Now, the Secretary is going to explore the energy and climate challenges that we have as a country. We're going to talk about many of the things we do in Vermont. I agree with Senator Sanders. We can be an example of that in things that can be done nationwide. I'm just going to point out just one thing, because you have questions, you want to hear from everybody. Just over the hill from here, the Odette's Blue Spruce Dairy Farm. Is somebody here from the farm? There you go. Thank you. They're operating a digester that extracts methane from the manure. There are 1,300 milking cows. Is that number correct? As well as replacement dairy heifers. Now, let me put that in context. That produces enough methane to supply all the electrical power needs of more than 300 homes. It sounds awfully prosaic, but cow power is the most reliable renewable energy source in the Green Mountain Power portfolio. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, but the cows keep supplying. Mary, did I state that delicately? So, with Marie Odette from Blue Spruce Farms here, good work. You know, we have by far the most per capita agricultural methane projects of any state in the country. It captures methane, a powerful greenhouse gas that would otherwise be released to the atmosphere. And for those of us who believe in the great, big, beautiful Lake Champlain, it also stops pollution runoff into that lake. I put a lot of money into the last farm bill for this, but we have to make sure that we do it not only in large farms, but small ones. The average size dairy farm in the United States is 144 cows. We have 64,000 dairy farms. Only 200 have installed biodigesters. And so the Secretary may think this is a hint, so don't tell him I said this. But I believe a modest level of additional support from the Department of Energy to overcome technical and economic barriers and to demonstrate the viability of biodigestion in small farms will yield great returns for us. So I mentioned that to you. Don't tell the Secretary that I said it, but it could really help. Because, you know, there's not just one source. It's not just wind. It's not just solar. It's not just methane. It's not just oil. It's not just gas. We have to do all of this. And then lastly, we've got to do one heck of a lot better at conserving in the way we build our homes, our buildings. We can do it. But it's not just a question, can we do it? As a nation, we have to. This is a major part of our security. Thank you all very much.
Our next speaker is Congressman Peter Welch. Peter has done a great job in a rather difficult environment in the House of Representatives.
Environment. You know what? There's a lot of climate change deniers, and I'm fond of pointing out that despite what you say about the house burning, I work with some of the best minds of the 18th century. they're wrong. But what is motivating, I think, a lot of the opposition is a fear. It's if we have to move into a new clean energy economy, can we do it? Will we do it? And what are the implications of the current job situation and economy that we have? And you know what? When there's a time of transition, people are nervous. And if you're going to take on the challenge, then you have to be able to address what the opportunity is on the other side. And Mr. Secretary, the reason you're here in Vermont is because we're doers, and facing the challenge rather than denying the problem is the way we deal with it. And we have a confidence that in addition to the benefits of clean energy, protecting our environment and ending the threat of climate change, we're going to create jobs. We're going to empower local communities to have stronger local economies. You know, you have a farm that's using the cow power to be a stronger farm and provide cleaner waterways. You have the Weybridge Town Energy Committee, Fran Putnam here, doing great work helping folks figure out how to retrofit their homes, save cash. You've got Acorn here in Middlebury that did so much with the solar project that's keeping, using our sun and keeping the bills down for local folks. And you know, that's about jobs. In the area where, the reason I'm getting a little bit more optimistic even in this House situation that we're in, is that I don't try to persuade the climate deniers that they're wrong on that, it's hopeless. But on the other hand, when I talk about energy efficiency and conservation, they get it. Because that's about saving money. And everybody wants to do that no matter what the power source. So we've actually, in the House, been getting bipartisan support on energy efficiency measures. And that's a solid step in the right direction. But when I'm trying to persuade my colleagues to take the next step, really to get over the fear rather than the denial, the best argument I can make is a concrete example of a local community that's done it right, or a local company that's doing it right. How many utilities have embraced net metering? Most of them see that as a threat to their economic model. And as long as it's a threat to the economic model, it's going to deny you the opportunity of distributed generation. Green Mountain Power, bring it on. Bring on net metering. So we've got a partnership here because we have a stake. Middlebury College was a leader where students pushed hard for the biomass plant, where A, we're confident about the future, B, we're confident in ourselves that we can face the future, and C, we're doing it together. We've got the private sector, we've got the public sector with Vermont, and we've got you in your local community. So we can get this done, and with the Secretary's help, we're going to do more of what we're doing so well and so vigorously. So thank you all for everything that you've done and that you're going to do. And I'm proud now to introduce one of the key drivers in this whole mission, and that's our governor, Peter Shumlin. Peter, come on up.
Thank you, Congressman Welch. Let's give a shout out to Middlebury for hosting us, making this all possible. To our panelists that we're about to hear from, thank you so much. It's a real honor as governor to welcome Secretary Moniz to Vermont. He finally figured out the best state in America to come and learn about energy, so we're grateful to you. And, you know, I am the only governor in America that can brag and be truthful about having the best congressional delegation in America. One great thing about being here at Middlebury and bringing the Secretary to Middlebury is that Middlebury gets this. And Addison County gets that we cannot move fast enough to get off of our addiction to oil and move to other ways of powering the future, not just for our kids and our grandkids to have a livable planet, and the stakes are extraordinarily high, but also because of what we see in our everyday lives. And if you told me, 3.5 years ago when I had the privilege of becoming governor of the best state in the country, it's going to be your job to work together with our congressional delegation, our president, our federal delegation, local communities, to manage some of the toughest climate change-induced storms that this state has ever seen. I would have said, really? I didn't know that that was part of what I was signing up for. But we all know that we don't need Irene and the other storms as reminders that we have already created enough destruction, enough environmental challenges, enough true obstacles to human and other life with what we've emitted already to know well enough that we can't move fast enough to get off of what we're doing and move to a more prosperous future. What we have going for us is that Vermont has very clear goals and unity about the benefits of getting there. By establishing clear goals, 90% renewable by 2050, by getting energy efficiency right and showing the rest of the nation how to do it. If you take 2013 alone, and I know the Secretary probably knows this, in Vermont, our efforts in electric efficiency alone saved us 13%, we used 13% less juice, just in 13, than we would have otherwise, which is the equivalent of taking thousands and thousands of cars off the roads in this great state in a single year. So we know that combined with energy efficiency and harnessing the wind, the sun, our fields and forests through biomass, cow power, as Senator Leahy just pointed out, Congressman Welch and Senator Sanders, all of the above, we are getting there. Now guess what? Since I've had the privilege of being governor, we have quadrupled the number of solar panels in Vermont in this great state in 3.5 years. Quadrupled. And what it means is that we are creating jobs and economic prosperity for our kids and our grandkids. It is not coincidence that as of the last report, Vermont has the second lowest unemployment rate in America. That we've created almost 11,000 new jobs in the last 3.5 years, and that over 1,000 of them are in solar sector jobs alone, leading solar sector jobs of any of the other 49 states. So the point is, as we talk about our obligation to get off of oil and move to other ways of powering the future, of using less energy and putting that money in Vermonters' pockets, of being the model for how to do energy right, we're creating jobs and prosperity, jobs that cannot be exported to India and China and other countries. So let's keep getting it right together. In short, our economic and energy vision should be this simple. Power Vermont forward. We can be, we must be, America's rural workbench for energy innovation. Jobs and a cleaner planet, that's the Green Mountain State. Now, I'm honored to be able to introduce the Secretary today. And, I was having fun watching the most powerful United States Senator in America lobby one of the most powerful secretaries in America. And I'm going to stay away from that. But I'm delighted to welcome Secretary Moniz to Vermont. I've got to say a huge thank you to Senator Sanders, Congressman Welch, and our senior Senator Patrick Leahy for getting them here. You probably know that Dr. Moniz headed MIT's Department of Physics and was the founding director of the MIT Energy Initiative and the MIT Lab for Energy and the Environment before he got snagged by the president. From 97 to 2000, Dr. Moniz served as Undersecretary of Energy. He was responsible for overseeing the department's science and energy programs. Good training for this job. Before that, he served as an Associate Director for Science in the Executive Office of the President. Now, he is one of the most forward-looking Energy Secretaries America's ever seen because he gets climate change and he gets that what we have to do something about it. The most impressive credential to me as a Vermont governor is he's the only secretary that looks like a Vermonter.
Leadership educationally and in walking the talk. And the carbon neutrality goal that you've mentioned, I believe also the local carbon neutral ski slope and a whole variety of other initiatives. One that you may be less aware of is your contribution of the Department of Energy Deputy Chief of Staff as a Middlebury graduate. Also helping us in the climate battles that way as well, through your human capital. The congressional delegation, Senator Sanders, Senator Leahy, Patrick Welch, you've heard them, you know them very well. The only problem I have is they're so shy and retiring about advancing the case here for Vermont and climate. This was not the first lobbying of today. We had breakfast and it was kind of ganging up lobbying. But actually it was really building on what has been over the years, these last years, a very strong partnership already between the Department of Energy and the state. And we're going to continue that. That's what we're discussing today because you have a platform here. Such as the smart metering capacity already in place that then allows many more things to happen. And so we're going to be very actively discussing that as we go forward. I've been here only since late afternoon yesterday. I've learned a lot. In fact, many of these panelists, most of these panelists, we met yesterday, and again a case where I didn't come here not already recognizing the innovation that's been displayed in Vermont in terms of clean energy, but nevertheless, you always find out there's so much more to know in terms of specifics. And I mean, efficiency, of course, has been tremendous. Interview was with Senator Sanders, who was on my confirmation committee. Essentially, the interview was over in approximately 7 seconds. Will you speak out about climate? Yes, you have my vote. There was a clarity that was much appreciated. So, a few words. Actually, in addition to being my anniversary season, it's also, of course, graduation season, and I'm sorry to say, for many of you in this audience of my vintage, you're old enough to remember The Graduate movie, Dustin Hoffman, and you may remember that wonderful scene in which he is pulled aside and very seriously given advice on the future, and it was one word: plastics, if you remember. And I would now do the rerun of that movie today with 2 words: clean energy. And son, you got a real future. Think clean energy. And it's true. Clean energy is the answer to at least 3 questions. How do we address climate? How do we address economic growth? And how do we address security? All 3 of those have been referred to already, but I think we have to remember clean energy is really how we look at all 3 of those. Let me say just a few words about each of those areas, and then perhaps if there is time for questions, we can also discuss more. On climate, it's been referred to already. Last week we put out the assessment report, the administration climate assessment report, which of course built in turn on the IPCC reports of just the last couple of months which have come out. They've all reinforced the story that many of us, probably most of us in this room, have been talking about now for a long period than that, in terms of the need to mitigate. Now, with a sharper focus, the need to adapt at the same time as we are mitigating because of the effects that we are already seeing, and the fact that the longer we wait, more difficult, more expensive it will be to reach our goals. Last June, the President put out his climate action plan, and it emphasized all of these points, including the one about the need to adapt, even as we address the paramount issue of mitigating the risks of climate change. You all know that already temperature rise of about 1 degree centigrade over the last century, most of that coming the last few decades. But I think the part of the assessment report that actually has been getting a lot of attention in the media, and I believe will increasingly get attention, and will be a major part of shifting the public, not here in Vermont, you're already there, but more broadly, is going to be this focus on regional assessments and regional impacts. They are very different, but that's kind of the point, that every part of our country is affected one way or another. In New England, it pointed to the issue of increased downpours. In other parts of the country, well, elsewhere, just about everywhere actually, with warming. I think one of the issues that's not been fully appreciated is that with increased average temperatures, it's not as though the temperature distribution just kind of shifts a little bit to the right. It's really that you add kind of a fat tail of really hot days. And really hot days have really significant consequences, most especially if you are in developing countries that do not have even the most rudimentary adaptation tools called like air conditioning. These are really, really important effects. Of course, in the East, the other thing pointed out is that we will have much more increased coastal damages, storm surges, etc. But I remind you, that assessment report, that's only a week old, is already pre-West Antarctic ice sheet and the additional 10 feet of global warming, of sea level rise that is anticipated just from that event. Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, could be looking like child's play if we do not really move forward aggressively. So I'll just say that as people of my right here all know very, very well, and the President has said, we really would love to be working with Congress to pass a comprehensive climate legislation. There's no doubt that ultimately we're going to need that. But in the meantime, as President Obama has emphasized again, we can't wait. We don't have time to wait. And that is why right now, the Climate Action Plan has laid out a administrative actions, essentially, to tell you the truth, you know, we spent collectively in the cabinet, we spent a couple of months leading up to the climate action plan. Essentially, what's everything that we could do using current authorities. That was basically the assignment from the president, and that's what we're trying to execute. So if you look at the Department of Energy's role, and of course, I should say one of the very much in the news, and I can guarantee you it will be more of the news in 2 weeks, is a very important part is the EPA regulatory approach on coal. The proposed rule for new coal plants has been issued and calls for at least partial carbon capture and sequestration. The spirit there, of course, is you build a power plant, you're talking 50 years. And so we better have any new coal plants, if they are built, had better be ready for that 50-year run, and that's where the carbon capture becomes important. Early in June will be issued the proposed rule now for existing coal plants, and something very important, and it was discussed yesterday, Congressman Welch in particular, that I think Administrator Gina McCarthy, another Boston person I might add, and she has the real Boston accent, I should say McCarthy, has made it very clear that the implementation of the carbon rules with regard to existing plants will have, and must have, much greater state flexibility for how goals are reached, their efficiency and renewables, for example, certainly will be part of that. I spoke with her after we spoke yesterday, so. At the Department of Energy, multifaceted. I'll just mention two of the areas very active. One is efficiency standards. We have very dramatically picked up the pace in terms of issuing efficiency standards for appliances, electronics, and the like. Just last week, we issued, 1 week ago today, we issued 2 more, one on electric motors and one on walking freezers. And you know, every time we mention one of these, sometimes there's a shrug. Big deal, walking coolers and freezers. Well, the fact is, if we look at the appliance standard, we expect over this administration, we will end up putting out about 40 new standards. And when you accumulate those and look at the cumulative impact up to, say, 2030, say, over the next 15 years, we anticipate these standards will avoid 3 gigatons of CO2 and avoid about $500 billion in energy costs. So, you know, we just got to keep at it because it is building this one piece at a time and get over there. And we are going to continue this pace to the end of this administration. So that's one example. But of course, on the other side, the department has clearly the lead responsibility for technology development, research development, demonstration, deployment. The work that we've done in the past has certainly helped get us to where we are today, but we have to keep driving because the goal of innovation in this sector is cost reduction. It's cost reduction, cost reduction, cost reduction. Those are the 3 objectives. And I say that because not only is it important in the context we've heard here in terms of the economic growth, et cetera, but the fact is we have to lead the way to bring along the large emerging economies, the developing countries, because we all know there is no solution ultimately without a collective global solution. And cost reduction is absolutely essential if we are going to bring along that major part of the world's population. So we're going to keep pushing on that. It's great. I mean, the progress is so substantial. PV, we have seen such dramatic cost reductions just yesterday here in the state. It was stated, as is the case in other parts of the country, that projects are being built. I mean, utility projects are being built at less than $2 a watt, kind of all in. That's a very, very big deal. In fact, now when Green Mountain Power combines that with new rate structures, those costs are already competitive without subsidy in many ways. So that's the kind of innovation here being propagated. It's a combination of the technology, the regulatory structures, all coming together to move forward much faster than we have been. That's another area which is fantastic in terms of cost reduction, LEDs. You know, one 60-watt light bulb, incandescent light bulb, replaced by an LED, would lead to an energy savings over the lifetime of the LED of approximately $130. One 60-watt incandescent. It's actually, technically, it's 25 incandescent light bulbs serially used to replace the one LED over its 25,000-hour lifetime. It wasn't long ago that while it was still a good life cycle choice, a $50 light bulb was kind of hard to swallow. Well, we're below $10. We're going to be at about $6 within a year, guaranteed. $4.99. Today, Vermont? Oh, well, that's not true in other parts of the country, but that's less than 1 year payback period. And frankly, without getting into names, because I can't, but talking to, for example, a major manufacturer, I said, suppose I put in an order for, say, $250 million. $1, $2? Yeah. So, you know, this is just a huge issue. And obviously, as you know, 1/6 of the energy requirements, basically. And finally, I just mentioned, in terms of vehicle batteries, again, enormous cost reduction. We need another factor of 2 or 3, but, you know, we're making good progress. Anyway, that gives you a flavor of some of the issues that the Department of Energy is pursuing for implementing the President's climate action. Now, let me be much more brief in 2 other areas. I said clean energy is the answer to these 3 questions. That's one. But a second one, I said the economy, and again, I won't go into you've heard about the jobs. I just want to say that the developing clean energy economy already in this country is providing what the President calls ladders of opportunity for providing really good jobs for people to rise up the economic ladder. And that's number 1. Number 2, every expectation of the capital requirements over the next 4 decades in the clean energy transformation. You're talking at least an average of $1 trillion a year globally. We want to push now the innovation. Those markets are forming. This is another case. If we wait 10 or 15 years, we're behind the 8 ball on climate, and we miss the boat on being big players in that market. So critical for our economy that we keep pushing this. Energy security. The third question. Senator Leahy referred to that here. I'll just add, if we look at the world today, we've got some real problems. Ukraine, Russia, for example. The energy insecurity of our friends and allies, in this case because of their dependence on Russian gas, is a national security problem for us. We see that playing out right today. Clean energy is part of the solution. In the Ukraine, the energy efficiency is 5 times worse than the European average. If they would just double the European average, there wouldn't be a problem. So when we think about energy security, it's not only who gives you your oil, it's about addressing things like a clean energy revolution as part of the security challenge. As I say, that's important for us geopolitically, even what's happening or not happening elsewhere. So clean energy, young man, it's in your future, to paraphrase the Graduate film, and I look forward to continued innovation in this state. The political coherence that we have here and the coherence with the private sector is so critical, and I will reinforce, to me, it really looks unique. It's going to be a great chance for us to work together going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you are doing, and we know what you will continue to do to address the great crisis of our time. You've heard a national and international perspective, and now you're going to hear a local perspective. We have 5 experienced and knowledgeable panelists. I'm going to ask them to be brief, because we want some questions. We don't have as much time as we want, because we want to get the Secretary to see a home which has been heavily weatherized, which has LED lights, which has solar, which created jobs which we see as the future of America. We want him to see them. So, in order for him to do that, you guys are going to have to be brief. Let me start off with Jack Byrne. I think as many know, Jack is the Director of Sustainability Integration here at Middlebury College, where he works with students, faculty, and staff to advance and support leadership in creating a more sustainable future. He is currently working on implementing the college's strategies for becoming carbon neutral by 2016. Jack, 5 minutes.
So I'll start by saying that it's a very exciting time here at Middlebury in our journey to address the climate challenge. We've come a long way toward that goal, and we're looking at the finish line. It's in sight. And as we do that, we're thinking about what do we do beyond 2016. And as we think about that, we think about how to do that so that we create the greatest benefits for our educational mission, for our partners, the town, the region, the state, and beyond. You know, Middlebury is an international institution. We made our first commitment to address climate change in 2004, setting a goal to significantly reduce our carbon emissions by 2012. 3 years later, the trustees set a new goal of carbon neutrality by 2016 because the college was on track to meet its 2012 goal with the completion of a biomass gasification system in 2009, germination of which came out of a collaboration between our environmental council and a class by an economist and a chemist. The goal of carbon neutrality was a result of the desire and the intellectual power of students, faculty, and staff to address climate change as an institution. They developed a plan that showed the trustees how such an ambitious goal could be achieved. The trustees resolved to do so, and today the college is 50% of the way to that goal, with completion of a biomethane project, which is unique, and I'll talk about a little bit later. The college is a partner with. We anticipate we'll be within reach of that goal by 2015, God willing. During that 10-year time frame, the college also invested in energy efficiency. In partnership with Efficiency Vermont, we completed 62 projects, invested $1.7 million, and are saving almost $500,000 a year on those investments, almost about a 3.5-year return on investment. We've reduced our demand for electricity by 3.4 million kilowatts per year. We've also invested in a local entrepreneur who is starting up a manure digester on a nearby farm that will produce biomethane. We've signed a long-term contract to purchase enough gas to displace the remaining fossil fuel we use when biomass is not enough to heat and power the campus. These projects make sense in many ways. From an economic standpoint, the biomass project saved us $2 million last year in fuel costs and reduced our carbon emissions by 50%. We avoided using 1.3 million gallons of fuel oil from faraway places with 23,000 tons of wood chips that come from within 75 miles of campus. That puts about $1 million of new money into the local forest products economy and into the pockets of loggers, mill operators, truckers, and the other people in that industry who often feel financial stress. The manure digester project will bring new income to the farmers involved by adding value to their manure resources. The digester will produce a carbon neutral fuel for the college and other customers, create bedding for farm animals, and provide a liquid fertilizer that is easier to inject into the soil than solid manure, and could decrease runoff into waterways. It's an important pilot project, first of its kind in the U.S., because the biomethane will be processed for off-farm use for an institutional customer to make heat and electricity for campus. The college leverages its educational power to address the climate and energy challenge through partnership with communities in other ways as well. This spring, our seniors in our environmental studies program partnered with the City of Rutland, Green Mountain Power, NeighborWorks, and Efficiency Vermont to research opportunities for energy efficiencies at the residential level in support of the city's efforts to shift to solar and other renewables as primary energy sources. They've identified a series of efficiency measures that could significantly decrease the demand for energy and reduce the need for new infrastructure. And they presented that at a public forum in Rutland earlier this week. The solar decathlon project has been mentioned, so I won't talk about that, just to say that that was a huge endeavor and an excellent example of a holistic liberal arts education. I'm going to finish by saying we look forward to working with all of those here at the summit and throughout Vermont to create new and better community-based solutions to the climate challenges we face, and doing so in ways that allow all of us and our Earth to flourish.
Scott Johnstone is the Executive Director of Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, VEIC, whose mission is to lower the economic and environmental costs of energy. VEIC also administers Vermont's Energy Efficiency, Utility Efficiency Vermont. Scott, thanks for being here.
Great, thank you so much for having me. You know, it's talking at an event like this, trying to make this really simple very quickly, right? So what's efficiency's role in getting a hold of our energy bills and doing something about this planet that will allow it to sustain us? Because for me, climate change isn't about whether the planet will survive. This planet will be here. It's a question of how about the things on it, like us and other living things, and how do we have to adapt and or not make it? So both of those come back to us. So I thought, you know, we're at an institute of higher education, and DOE believes in the same things of scientific principle and math. And when I thought about how to tell the story, I realized we only need first grade math to tell Vermont's efficiency story. It takes two $1 bills and a 5. So I thought perhaps we can all do that probably, right? So if buying the next increment of power in Vermont costs $2, just 2, and we could provide the same opportunity for you to be powered through efficiency for $1, how much of that do we want? Do we want that or not? We want that. So we're down to $1. And how about if by investing that $1 into our economy, we got $5 of value back? Is that a good deal? Do you want us some of that? That's the Vermont efficiency story. But wait, there's more. So then you add the other benefits of taking this work on. You know, there's over 2,000 direct jobs in our local economy that wouldn't otherwise be here who work on efficiency projects. Your friends, neighbors, and the citizens of Vermont that get to be employed, as you've heard from folks. And that money continues to churn in our local economy. But depending on which study you look at, 80 to 90% of every dollar spent on efficiency stays right at home, employing us and keeping our businesses open. That's real economic impact. The cost of healthcare, which we're talking about so much, goes down. Educational quality goes up. I assume we're in favor of all those things as we go. Last year's efficiency measures will result in over 700,000 tons of carbon coming out of the skies over their measure lives. That's real climate impact in Vermont, which, Governor, the number is 135,000 cars off the road as a result of efficiency last year in Vermont. That is a big deal. Creates $62 million worth of net economic benefits in Vermont, and our efficiency efforts so far have resulted in the deferment of $280 million worth of transmission and distribution in Vermont because of the work that you all did. It's about you and what you decide to implement. It also in Vermont means we have to care about each other. We always do on everything we do in Vermont. Equity matters. It's not about whether some of us get to have a better energy future and contribute to saving the planet, but we all do. Vermont has a great tradition there too. Since the 90s, we've put state money into weatherization to supplement the federal money. And the weatherization agencies and the heat squad through NeighborWorks, over time we've hit over 22,000 homes in Vermont for low-income Vermonters, helping them get control of their energy burden so they can not have to choose so much between food and energy and rent and the other impossible choices Vermonters have to make. That's real positive impact of efficiency as well. It takes everybody. But ultimately it comes down to you. Because really, who takes the action? You do. What do you need? You need three things. You need to know what you need to know. You need to be educated. Sometimes you need a little help on what you don't know, technical assistance. And for the market transformation principles that the Secretary talked about, there has to be a little money and incentives so that that $60 light bulb can go through the market cycles to come down to a $1 light bulb. Same thing with snow guns or any other piece of equipment that we deal with here, right? Those are the only three things we need to do, and then Vermonters will make the right choice. And so, from Efficiency Vermont to the weatherization agencies, the contracting community, the architect community, everybody engaged gets at the comprehensive energy plan the goal of 90%, because efficiency's role in the comprehensive energy plan is 90% of what? If that 13% grows to a bigger number, then 90% of what becomes a lot easier, right? So more efficiency. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mary Powell has been president and CEO of Green Mountain Power since 2008. And under her leadership, Green Mountain Power is now one of the most progressive private utility companies in the country. Mary?
Thank you. Nice to be here today. Thank you so much. I was thinking as I was listening to Secretary Moniz and our awesome delegation and our governor, I was thinking about, we had this event that I know all of you remember in Vermont called Hurricane Irene, and it was a horrific event. We all worked together, not just to get Vermonters through that event, but also I think it really fueled a lot of the change that we're seeing in our state now. But I was thinking about the moniker, I am Vermont strong, and I was sitting here and I was thinking, I am Vermont proud. I really am so proud to be here with all of you and to be here in this state doing the work I'm doing. And not to continue the lobbying, but I will. I didn't always live here. I've lived here 25 years, so I know that doesn't make me a Vermonter, but I feel like and there is no other place in the country like this where we can get what we're getting done. Not just that, it's not just what we're doing, it's the speed with which we can do it in Vermont because we know how to work together when we care about something. And our journey at Green Mountain on this issue started a long time ago. Actually, I honestly have to tell you, Secretary Moniz, when I hear the latest, oh my gosh, this is what they're saying about climate change. No, really? This is what they were saying 15 years ago. This is what they were saying 15 years ago. Vermont was going to have to, I was told by Jonathan Lash, which I know many of you know him, a great guy who did a lot of great work in our state. I was told 15 years ago, Vermont better get really good at disaster recovery, because we're going to have a lot of torrential rains, and we've had it, So our journey started with how do we change? That's what we did. We tried to change within our organization. We tried to lower our carbon footprint. We were one of the first companies in the state to go to a lot of electric vehicles. We moved rapidly in that direction. We went to biodiesel. We made these changes. And then in 2007, 2008, we launched a strategy to really dramatically ramp up Vermont-owned renewable energy. Not all Green Mountain-owned renewable energy, Vermont-owned renewable energy, and be part of a tremendous transformation. And now what we're really poised to do is work much more intensely and closely with customers on what we believe really will deliver on the triple bottom line of the environment, the society, and the economy, which is to have customers engage much more deeply with their own generation. I mean, ultimately, if we're going to move to a more resilient and socially strong and economically strong society, we've got to move to distributed generation. That is the way to have a more sustainable, resilient energy future. And that's what we're really engaged with, and we're really excited, Secretary Moniz, that we're going to have you see what we're doing in Rutland. But that's really only the beginning. We also want to thank you because we have partnered with the Department of Energy. We would not be in the position we are if it were not for the fact that we are one of the only states that really has pretty much stem to stern smart technology. That's really important in moving to this new, much more sustainable future. We would not be able to do one of the incredible projects we're doing in Rutland that you're going to see later with battery storage and solar. And creating a microgrid in Rutland if it had not been for the support of the Department of Energy. So thank you. I think it's really only the beginning, this state can be a model for the country. I firmly believe that, and I am so darn proud to be sitting here with these great Vermonters and be a part of this tremendous future. So thank you.
Dr. Paul Hines is an assistant professor in the School of Engineering at the University of Vermont with a secondary appointment in computer science and is also a member of the adjunct research faculty at the Carnegie Mellon Electricity Industry Center. Paul?
Firstly, I'd like to thank Secretary Moniz, Governor Shumlin, and the congressional delegation for organizing this really important discussion. Thank you. Almost all of the problems that we face as a society, including economic competitiveness, clean water, clean air, climate change, are tightly intertwined with energy problems. If we're to find the innovative solutions that are needed, we need active collaboration between business, government, and the academy. In the next few minutes, I'd like to describe two examples of how the University of Vermont is collaborating with industry and with DOE's national labs to come up with energy solutions to solve the problems that we face. First, I'd like to tell a really quick story. So, September 8, 2011, a line worker in a power substation in Southern California did a relatively routine maintenance operation. And a small error in this process caused a transmission line in California and between California and Arizona to fail. And that triggered a combination of a long string of failures that left 7 million people in the southwestern United States without power. Well, we might hope that failures of this sort are rare. They are not. We continue to have large blackouts, and our grid is increasingly vulnerable, particularly as we see the increase of large storms like Irene and Sandy impacting the electricity infrastructure. The U.S. grid is vulnerable. It's an incredible engineering marvel, but we need to work hard to make it the resource that can deliver the clean energy that we need from the places that need it from the sources to the places that need it. And so to address the problem of large blackouts, UVM is collaborating with IBM on a project that will give operators better information about risks in their network. During the course of this DOE-funded project, we've developed new methods that can measure blackout risk and tell that to operators hundreds of times faster than existing approaches can solve this problem. We've developed a new indicator of grid health that can use large data sets from smart grid sensors that are being deployed in Vermont and elsewhere to tell operators when the grid is not healthy. And then secondly, UVM is actively collaborating with Vermont utilities and with the DOE-funded Smart Grid Implementation Grant, E-Energy Vermont. Currently, my research group is collaborating with Burlington Electric Department to test a new type of energy efficiency social network to help people understand why one home is different than another, why one home consumes more electricity than another. And with Green Mountain Power to understand the impact of different price incentives and better information on electricity consumption during peak hours of peak electricity demand when electricity is dirtiest. During these research collaborations with help from Senator Sanders, UVM began an active collaboration with Sandia National Laboratories, one of DOE's premier research institutions. One of the most exciting outcomes of this collaboration is the recently awarded National Science Foundation Integrated Graduate Education and Research Traineeship Program. The IGRAD program is one of the NSF's most competitive awards, and this grant is going to ultimately bring 22 new PhD students to Vermont to work with innovative professors and study ways to modernize the electricity infrastructure that is so important. Uniquely, UVM is studying not just the technology of the grid, but also how that technology needs to interact with policy, how human behavior is influenced by technology and policy. Finally, this project illustrates demonstrates the power of collaboration between industry, national labs, and academia. During summers, PhD students in our program do internships at Sandia National Labs, learning from really top researchers at that institution. Students work with electricity industry members, such as on this panel here, in order to understand how their research fits in with the problems that utilities are facing. And finally, students are active in UVM Complex Systems Center, studying with some of the most innovative professors in the country and learning to take a holistic approach to their research. To conclude, I'd like to thank our honored guests for facilitating this panel to talk about how UVM and other organizations in the great state of Vermont are facilitating collaboration between industry, between government, and academic research to solve the critical energy challenges of our time. Thank you.
I think we all know that the world doesn't change unless ordinary people get involved in the process. Jamie Irvin serves as a volunteer on her local town energy committee, Waterbury Leap, and also serves on the Vermont Natural Resources Council's State Advisory Committee on Renewable Energy. She has a PhD in Natural Resources Planning from the University of Vermont and works for the United Nations. Jamie?
Thank you. Waterbury Leap, our volunteer town energy committee, and the twin towns of Waterbury and Duxbury provide the perfect prism for understanding community-based renewable energy in Vermont. They provide us both a paradox and a parable. First, the paradox. Solar in Vermont is counterintuitive and it's hard. We have more hills and hollows than most of the Midwest combined. We have the second cloudiest state in the nation, and Portland, Oregon sees more rain, sees more sunshine than we do in Waterbury and Duxbury. Of the 30 miles in my town of Duxbury, less than a third of a mile is on a three-phase power line. 80% of our area is forested, and a good portion of remaining land is already developed. It's wetland, it's floodplain, or it's prime farmland, none of which is particularly well suited to solar. We are not now, nor will we ever be, Arizona. And yet, we are radically changing the face of renewable energy in Vermont. Our two towns, Waterbury and Duxbury, have been able to quadruple the amount of installed community solar in just 2 years, the hard way, one roof at a time. Waterbury is number 3, and Duxbury is number 1 in community solar, in a state that already ranks 9th in the nation in solar. Together, our two towns average more than 240 watts for every man, woman, and child. It's a full solar panel. That's equivalent. If we were competing on a per capita basis, we would be leading Arizona by 50%. Duxbury is the largest school solar array in the state, and this is in a town that ranks 89th in per capita income. Waterbury is the epicenter of solar jobs, thanks largely to Sun Common, in a state that is the national epicenter in solar jobs. Now the parable. Solar in Vermont is not counterintuitive, it's not hard. It's intuitive and it's easy, and we're making it happen. It's easy because we have enabling policies and legislation that allow us to find creative net metering solutions that help democratize and distribute energy. It's easy because we have ambitious goals in our state comprehensive energy plan that inspire us to move faster and further. It's easy because we have state and federal tax incentives that help level the playing field and counterbalance the preponderance of fossil fuel subsidies. It's easy because we have utility CEOs like Mary Never Say No to Solar Power. And it's easy because we have creative financing options from companies like Green Lantern Capital and Encore Redevelopment and Sun Common that allow schools and municipalities and businesses and hospitals and families to switch to solar with no money down and save money in the process. But our secret sauce in Waterbury and Duxbury is an active town energy committee that spent thousands of voluntary hours collectively holding energy fairs, meeting with select boards, meeting with school boards, writing articles, holding open houses, and doing all the things that chronic do-gooders like myself and Duncan McDougall, who founded Waterbury Leap, do every day. But our secret sauce in Vermont is that there are more than 100 town energy committees across the state. 1 out of every 1,000 Vermont residents belongs to a town energy committee. That's double the number of dentists in Unfortunately, it's not double the number of lawyers. For the benefit of Secretary Moniz, if you have been involved or are involved in a town energy committee, just a shout out, just a show of hands. So my final words are these. Town energy committees are one of the strongest engines to jumpstart the early adoption of renewable energy and to drive the transformation to clean energy. We are the boots on the ground. If we can do it in Waterbury, and most certainly if we can do it in Duxbury, we can do it anywhere in Vermont. And if we can do it in Vermont, we can pretty much do it anywhere. Thank you.
We're running a little late. We have time for some questions. Phil is over there with a microphone. And who else? We got a mic over there as well. We got two mics either side. Start off. Who's going to start off? I've got it here. All right, one right here.
I'm Fran Putnam. I'm from the Waivers Energy Committee, and we've been working on weatherization the past year, and we managed to weatherize almost 6% of the homes in our town. So I'm a big proponent of weatherization, but we need some help. We need more funding, we need more, especially for low-income weatherization. And I'd like to know what we can do to get a little more in the way of incentives, because people want to do this, they need to do this, they understand it, but if
You're absolutely right. Everybody hear the question? This is what we call the low-hanging fruit. This is the easiest stuff. We live in a state where there are a lot of older buildings, older homes. People are paying, in some cases, twice as much as they should be paying, and we're emitting a lot more greenhouse gas emissions. All of us. Senator Welch has done a great job in the House. Senator Leahy and I have worked together in the Senate to bring forth, to do our best, to bring forth substantial sums of money. And one of the beauties of this is if you provide $15,000, $20,000, and we're going to see this in Rutland, to a home, they weatherize their home, their energy bill gets cut in half, they pay back that loan through the reduction in their fuel cost. It doesn't cost anybody an extra nickel. This is an investment. So we are all working hard, and I want the Secretary to talk a little bit about maybe what the Energy Department is doing.
Yeah, just in a word, of course, on weatherization specifically, there was an enormous Recovery Act funding, and ironically, that led to a dip following it, and we are rebuilding that. In fact, in our fiscal year 2015 budget request, we have a request for a substantial rebuild of the weatherization fund, kind of getting back to the right levels. That's one point. The second point I'll just make is a broader one on efficiency. As you all know, with the budget agreement in Congress, and we welcome the fact that we got back to kind of regular order on appropriations, but the 2015 budget is flat from 2014. Despite that, our budget request to Congress in FY15 has a 49% increase requested in energy efficiency. Is really the place where we're putting our way. We hope to be able to put our money.
I might add there are a lot of us on the Appropriations Committee that strongly support that.
I'd like to echo Mary Powell's pride in our congressional delegation and in the things happening in our state, both in government and business. And yet it doesn't always happen that we have that sense of pride at the national level. And one of the elephants in the room on that is the effect of big money on all three branches of government. And I'm wondering what our delegation thinks it will take for the Congress to overcome the effect of big money and take substantial steps toward global warming abatement.
Started, I'm going to go to Senator Leahy, Congressman Welch. Money has always played and had an impact on politics. It is worse now than it has ever been in history of the United States. The Citizens United Supreme Court decision was the worst decision handed down by the Supreme Court in many, many years. We need a constitutional amendment to overturn it. Second point, no accident. People like the Koch brothers, who are worth $80 billion and make a lot of their money through fossil fuel, are working day and night against every initiative that we have talked about here. And the idea that people who are worth billions are able to buy the political process, buy and sell politicians, is not what American democracy is supposed to be about. Your question is very, very important. Because unless we get a handle on that issue, it is very hard to elect people to Congress who are going to stand up and deal with the real issues facing this country rather than simply represent the top 1%. So we have our hands cut out, our work cut out for us in terms of real campaign, finance reform, which in my view should eventually lead to public funding of elections rather than Koch brothers buying elections. So,
Citizens United basically gutted the McCain-Feingold bill. But within the guidelines, even of Citizens United, which I think was one of the worst Supreme Court decisions I've seen in my lifetime. And they say a corporation is a citizen. Well, if that's the case, you know, when back in the 50s, we elected General Eisenhower as president. We now elect General Electric as president, General Motors. I mean, it's about that illogical thing. We had legislation that, even under the strictures of Citizens United, could have restored much of McCain-Feingold. They passed the House of Representatives, at that time under Democratic control. It came to the Senate. It failed by one vote. If any Republican had voted, if John McCain had voted to restore part of McCain-Feingold, it would have passed. It didn't. I am not normally a fan of constitutional amendments, but the Senate Judiciary Committee next month will begin hearings under my guidance of a constitutional amendment to overturn it.
Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders, and I'm with you. Take the money out of politics, it'll take a new court. It was a 5-4 decision, or it'll take a constitutional amendment. I'm co-sponsoring the amendment in the House.
Hi, everybody. My name's RJ Adler. I'm a Middlebury Energy Committee member, and I'm also lucky enough to have one of those wonderful solar jobs that you guys all talk about at some time. So thank you. And my question is regarding the natural gas pipelines coming through Addison County, as well as the use of air source heat pumps, which are better in so many ways than natural gas. And then everything you guys have been saying about climate, which I'm so excited to hear about, because I am, very much a believer in this, and I am a solar, I'm employed by the solar industry. How can we marry solar and these renewables, as opposed to investing more money into natural gas and into these fossil fuels? So what's I guess the real question is, how do you see these two pieces living harmoniously, as opposed to, going with this option that is going to create the future that you've been so wonderfully talking about today?
First of all, with regard to, a few points. Number one is our strategy, called all of the above, means that we start with the statement that we must go to low carbon. Within that boundary condition, like physicists again, of low carbon, then we are investing across the board in what can be technologies to advance to low carbon. Why? Why across the board? Because if we look at different regions of this country, and if we look at different countries in the world, the reality is the low carbon solutions will look different in different places. So that's why we are advancing that. Number two, if we look at natural gas, in my previous life, we spent a lot of time studying on natural gas and asked the question, is natural gas part of the problem or part of the solution for climate? And we came up with a firm answer of yes. And the reason is that in the near term, it's undeniable, it's a fact, that the natural gas substitution for coal has been about half of our national carbon reduction over the last several years. However, as we look to the longer-term future, where we have to, it's not going to be a 17% reduction we're aiming at, as opposed to an 80% reduction, then of course gas as a fossil fuel becomes too carbon intensive. So that's the spirit in which, in the climate context, gas is we see as a bridge, and certainly in certain parts of the country, an important one. I will also say that it is also undeniable that today the gas has contributed to a substantial manufacturing revival, over $100 billion invested in new manufacturing, and that's very important. But again, in the context that we are roughly halfway to the President's 17% carbon reduction goal by 2020, and about half of the progress we have made has been gas substituted for coal. Now again, that's again going to be a very regional issue. It isn't a uniform issue across the country or across the world. Last thing I'll say, pretty obvious. If we do not develop the approaches that can let coal go forward with much, much lower carbon, as in the EPA's new coal plant rule in this country, we've got a real problem. You know, China is now using half the coal in the entire world, while we've gone down in coal use about 20%. In the last 20 years, they've gone from 1 to, I think, nearly 4 billion tons a year. And if we don't get a hold of that problem, it's not going to be a global solution. So anyway, that's part of our view that we have to try to do what we can to enable those technologies across the board, because we're going to look at different low carbon solutions everywhere. The Vermont solution is a terrific one in looking at the combination of efficiency and renewables as the core.
One last question. Bill?
Who has the power to stop this pipe that stands in the way of our rights? Shumlin! Shumlin! Shumlin!
One last question, please. Is the gentleman there? Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hold that mic close to your mouth, please.
My name is Rebecca Foster. I live in Charlotte, which is not too far up the road. And I'm on the Energy Committee, and I have 2 children. And I would like to say that we shouldn't just be talking about carbon emissions, reducing carbon emissions. We should be talking about greenhouse gases. And methane is proven to be far worse than methane, which is natural gas, is far worse than carbon, according to many studies and many more people more smart than I am. So my question to you is, how can you stand and be proud about being the green state and a leader in the country when we are proposing to make a natural gas fracked pipeline to an international paper that will make us just as regressive and thoughtless as all the other states in the country? And how do you square saying that we are a green state with not standing up and speaking out against that? I have no direct say in the decision for this pipeline, and nor do you, but that's not an excuse for me not to speak out. People will listen to what you have to say. If you're concerned about reducing greenhouse gases, then you should be speaking out against this international paper fracked gas pipeline.
Let me thank all of you for being here. Let me thank the panelists. And most importantly, let me thank the Secretary for being here. As I indicated earlier, I think for a variety of reasons, this state has the capability of leading the nation. And if we get our act together, we can lead the world and end up having a profound impact on the state of humanity. Thank you all very much.